Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today, especially designed for our graduates with disabilities. Today, we're going to discuss supports and services available to you as you navigate the job search process. My name is Tricia Grace, and I'm the career advisor at George Brown College. There's a little bit of housekeeping to cover before we get going. If you'll notice at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there's a purple arrow. And if you click that, you'll go into a chat room. And that's where you might want to post some questions that you have for our panelists. It's also where you'll go if you are experiencing any kind of tech issues. There's someone there, there's a moderator there who can help you out, so you can address your questions to that person. Also, it's a place where we're going to have the links to any resources that we talk about. So you'll see that in the chat section. You can do a screenshot of those at the end of the webinar. We will also be sending out those links in a week's time, as well as I believe we are recording the session. So I believe the webinar will go out to all of those who have participated as well. All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce our guest panelists today. Tara Pattison is the Manager of Employment Services at Path Employment. Welcome, Tara. Ronald Peters is Inclusive Recruitment Specialist at RBC. Ronald, great to have you. Lisa Kelly, Program Manager of Discoverability, supported by the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. Oh, I hope everyone's got their mics on. Can everybody just, I want to check us out. Lisa, are you there? Ronald? Tara?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, super. Just want to make sure everyone's connected in. Ronald, are you okay? Okay, this is all new, people. This is the new norm. So sometimes we're going to run into some problems. I'm sure we can work this through. I can see Ronald's working hard, coming on board. So hopefully we can have him on soon. Okay. Well, I'm going to just get started while Ronald's working on that. And just so you know, we're very conscious of the language that we use around disabilities. So you will find that we go between person with disability and disabled person, just to respect the different ways that people like to be referred to. So we'll be conscious of that, and I hope we're able to stick to that. Okay, so I wanted to start actually with some statistics. According to a Canadian survey on disability conducted by Statistics Canada in 2017, 22% of working age Canadians have at least one disability that limits everyday activities because of a long-term condition or health problem. This represents approximately 6.2 million people in Canada. The top four most common are pain-related at 15%, flexibility at 10%, mobility at 10%, mental health at 7%. Other disability types are visual or seeing at 5%, hearing at 5%, dexterity at 5%, learning at 4%, memory 4%, development 1%. Employment rates for working age adults are 80% for persons without a disability and 59% for persons with a disability. So we understand there are some major challenges faced by those seeking employment who have a disability. And I'd like to start by having each of you speak about the mandate of your organization or program to counter this low employment number. Who would like to go first?
I'll jump up if that's okay. Tara, is that okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Tara and I have worked together as have Ronald and I. My name is Lisa Kelly, and I work with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and our mandate is to help businesses in Ontario. We represent 135 local chambers of commerce with 60,000 businesses become more productive. And the number one thing that they're telling us is labor market shortages. So we created the Discoverability Network to help match candidates with a disability to employers who are looking to hire people with a disability, because they understand this is a great talent pool to recruit from.
Okay, good to know. Thanks, Lisa. Ronald, can you tell us a little bit about your program at RBC as far as its mandate?
Sure, definitely. So again, name is Ronald Peters. Sorry, my audio was out in the beginning, so if you introduced me before, I'm just going to do it again. So I work for the inclusive recruitment team at RBC, and my team's mandate, of course, is really to help find candidates from diverse talent pools across Canada, including a big chunk of that is for persons with disabilities, and I lead that stream. In terms of the mandate for persons with disabilities, we are actively sourcing candidates with disabilities. So we have that outreach piece. And then we also have a mandate in terms of developing our managers and creating that awareness within the organization to really help to drive the inclusion of disabled candidates into the organization.
Okay. Wonderful. Great. Tara, what about Path Employment? Tell us a little bit about Path Employment.
Sure. So Path Employment Services, we're located in Hamilton, Ontario, and our mandate is to support people with disabilities with accessing inclusive employers in the labor market. So we support people with preparing for work, so resumes, practice interviews, and then we reach out to employers to actually market our clients with disabilities to the employers themselves. So we help people to work through requesting accommodations if they're needed, identifying their skills, interests, and abilities, and making that actual connection.
Okay, great. So 3 wonderful programs that are out there to help those who are seeking assistance in employment. So great. So what do you think is the biggest obstacle to increasing those employment numbers? What are your thoughts? Can we start with maybe Tara?
Sure. So in preparation for this question, I spoke with my employment coordinators who work directly with our clients with disabilities. And they spoke a lot about stigma as being a major issue for people with disabilities and the perception of, what a disability is. So that's a major obstacle. Other ones are lack of mental health supports for people with mental health challenges, and making those connections and knowing how to ask for an accommodation. Those were some of the major challenges, and so that's really what we see as the obstacles.
Okay, all right, Lisa, on your end.
So I would agree with what Tara said, which is I think the unconscious bias or the stigma that exists is the #1 challenge. So there's just a lot of misconceptions, which is interesting because we've been talking about this for many years, about how great people with disabilities can be in the marketplace. And I think that's because there's such a wide range of disabilities. People feel uncomfortable, people worry that they're going to say the wrong thing. So I don't think it's meant to, actually stop people or create barriers, but I think that unconscious bias piece is huge. I also think that we have a somewhat fragmented support system for people with disabilities. So it's locational, sometimes it's by type of disability, and that can be a barrier for employers. I know RBC actively recruits candidates with a disability, but if you have to contact 50 or 60 agencies to find the right candidate, that can be problematic in itself. So I think that those 2 would be the ones that I would speak about.
What's your opinion on this, Ronald?
So from RT's perspective, both my colleagues here we mixed all those pieces together. Definitely the unconscious bias is something that we've continued to work on and trying to evolve that perception to really show the ability portion for high managers internally. And again, like Lisa just mentioned there, sometimes I actively look out for candidates with disabilities for some of my roles, and I will have to reach out to multiple people to at least get a handful of candidates. So sometimes it's a bit of a challenge. But another thing which I see a lot, because I work with my recruiters, again, as I mentioned before, we rarely have that mandate, my team, and I work close with recruiters. So I find candidates and I would literally try to profile them to the recruiter. I say, hey, this is one of my candidates with a disability, give them a look. Now, something that I've been noticing, and I'm getting feedback from my recruiters as well, is how my candidates with disabilities tell their stories inside of the resume.
Okay.
It could be a myriad of reasons, but in terms of how we structure a resume, tell your story, there's still a lot of work to be done. Roles are very competitive. So just on a resume to resume standpoint, a recruiter is 30 seconds. You got to wow them in that first half, that first half of the first page to really encourage them to pause and keep going in your resume. If we're not wowing them, you don't want to give them a reason to go to the next person, basically. So a lot of storytelling, how we structure our resumes, I think there needs to be some work done in that field as well. That has been a challenge I've been seeing recently.
Okay.
Ronald, sorry, Tricia, can I just interject and ask Ronald? So Ronald, I think that's even in the interview as well. I definitely see that, how people talk about themselves and or their disability when they should be focusing on abilities once they get into that interview process. Would you agree, Ronald?
100%, yeah. So yeah, when you start at the top of the funnel in terms of the resume, that's one piece. If I get them into an interview, again, so one was you show me a story on a piece of paper. Now I want you to tell me your story, and it's all about engaging and being interactive in an interview. Not again, and I just want to be clear. It's not just about how you answer questions. That's one thing for sure, but sometimes the candidates need to ask questions back. The goal is to try to make the interviews a sort of a conversation. Our recruiters and managers, we actually have a pretty organized structure in the interviewing. We'll ask a set of questions, then you'll always hear a cue. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Do you have questions for me? Under no circumstance should you not have a question. So sometimes when you might answer questions kind of weak, you're not sure, but you can redeem yourself in an interview by asking some really smart questions. Your goal is to become memorable in the minds of the recruiter. So it's like, they interviewed 10 people, but you know what? I remember Tara. She asked some really good questions. I felt like she was part of the team already. So so it's the resume, and then of course you tell your story in interview.
So it sounds like it's really two-sided. It's educating employers so they understand,
Sure.
and it's also educating candidates so they are more comfortable talking about their abilities.
100%. Yes.
Okay, great. I wanted to get an idea of the positions that employers most hire for in your experience. Maybe at Path first. What do you find, Tara?
So I love this question. So, there's a tendency to look at people with disabilities as a homogeneous group. And when you think about the types of positions that are suitable for people with disabilities, my response to that is all of them. So there isn't a position that we're not able to support somebody in getting into. So when we talk about the types of positions, it's really everything. We have psychiatrists on our caseloads. We have nurses. We have welders. We have you name a position, and there's a person with a disability that can suit that position. So, I mean, it's everything. There isn't a position that isn't suitable for somebody.
Ronald, at RBC, what are the specific positions that you fill typically?
Yeah, sure, definitely. RBC is a very big organization. Over 80,000 employees. I'll almost consider like a little country. You can find careers in almost every sphere of working life. Whether, like, I didn't even know we even have an art curator on staff. So we have all the artwork around the world. Somebody manages that for the bank. But in terms of specific roles that certainly I come across often, sales and service is probably the area where we have the highest volume of recruitment to begin with. It's right across the board. It's also the department or the groups, those customer-facing groups actually have the most well-developed disclosure and accommodation procedures and acceptance for persons with disabilities. I've done events in the past where recruiters will only do an event for persons with disabilities, and then we hire 5, 6 people on one afternoon. That kind of thing. We have done that before, and we're certainly getting ready to do some more stuff again.
Okay.
So sales and service for sure, but by no means is it limited to that. I'm looking for places in technology. That's always growing, for sure, finance and everything like that.
Okay. So again, pretty much any position is open to everybody.
100%.
Lisa, your experience when you're reaching out to employers, what sort of jobs and employers are you working with?
Well, again, we have 60,000 businesses that we work with, so it's across the map. On the Discoverability network, the employers that tend to post jobs are actually looking for people with a disability. They're actively recruiting. So RBC is one of those. I've been working with Tara and a couple other Hamilton-based companies. So they are looking, and it's across the gamut. I have a technology company, I have IT, Bell's on there, RBC, CBC is advertising some recent 12-week internships just for people with disabilities. We have entry level, we have, in the hospitality industry, not right now because of COVID, but it really just ranges, and it's across all different industries, it's across all different levels. So, people with disabilities across, we're part of the Canadian population, 22%. What job isn't going to be there?
Exactly. Okay, Ronald, in 2018, RBC put out an employment equity report, and in that they included an approach called Measures to Remove Barriers. And within that, there is a special measure for persons with disabilities. Can you tell us a bit more about RBC's approach and what some of these special measures are that have been introduced?
Definitely, and it kind of will harken back to some of what I've been already talking about. So some of those special measures to really show a directed approach for recruiting persons with disabilities. It's like I do targeted sourcing activities. So we've done, for example, events where I have hosted a couple in-person networking events pre-COVID, of course, where I only invited persons with disabilities. And we brought them down to our auditorium, and we brought hiring managers and recruiters. Now, it wasn't a hard recruitment event. It was a networking event. And the goal, of course, was for managers and candidates to engage with each other. Right? It was going beyond just handing them a resume. We wanted the engagement for the managers as well as for the candidates to get that experience and see that there's a person behind the people. Out of that led some great follow-ups. People got interviews. I think we got a few hires out of that. So that's one thing. Another targeting sourcing activities, like I mentioned with sales and service, I will actually do a hard recruitment event. So if you're invited, we're going to take you through the process. The goal is to get you an interview and potentially make some hires. So that's on the external client-facing side of things. The other side of the special measures is the preparation of our hiring managers. So it's building that awareness. Lisa, just a couple of weeks ago, did a presentation for us for managers around supporting candidates with disabilities and how to really incorporate them into your teams. So we're really going a long way in sort of preparing staff for that. And of course, we're also building a lot of disclosure and accommodation procedures around our recruitment process, our onboarding process, again, in order to get ready for those staff members with disabilities.
Okay, great. And we will be discussing the big question for many grads around disclosure. So I'll bring that up in a sec. But Lisa, I wanted to ask you, when you reach out to employers about discoverability, what do you say are the benefits of hiring a person with a disability?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I spend usually an hour talking about the benefits to them. So as Ronald's heard and Tara's heard, but I think there's a couple things that really stand out. So number one is, it's people who who improve the productivity and the profitability of your organization. So what business would not be interested in that? And that comes through a number of different statistics and reports and actions that we know, but we know that people with disability bring diverse approaches. So that can make actually the money you spend oftentimes towards accommodation comes back to you in productivity increases. We know that people with disabilities tend to stay in a job longer, so it lowers, you know, training costs because you're not having to train someone every few months. We know that people with disabilities are as productive, if not more, and that they actually have as good of attendance or better attendance. We know that people with disabilities actually work more safely. So there's, you know, if you can get an employee who's going to stay longer, work just as hard, show up just as often, and work more safely, why would you not hire, as well as improve the culture? It's kind of, you know, I don't know why more people don't hire people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
If I may just kind of build on that a little bit, and I just want to give an example. And it's the beautiful thing about including persons with disabilities in the workforce is sometimes the perspective they can bring to a situation. So I'm going to give a personal example. I myself have a disability. I can't use my right hand. My whole right side is a bit weak. I started off in the bank in sales and service. So I was a banking advisor. So investments and credit. I had an incident where, not incident, a situation where a candidate who had a disability, sorry, I keep going between customer and candidates. I had a customer once came to me. He had a disability, and we're talking. I was helping him with his banking transactions, and on his profile, I realized he did not have an RDSP account. So that's a registered disability savings plan, which the government provides for persons with disabilities. Now, that was something I got introduced to when I started with the bank. So I started to talk to him, and we started to engage a little bit, and I told him about it, and he said he wasn't aware of it. And I was able to kind of guide him through how to go about signing up to get this RDSP set up for himself. And he was so grateful, right? So that I achieved my goal. I helped him with his initial needs from a financial services standpoint, but I potentially made him financially better off for the long term. And because I could have brought that personal perspective to that engagement, I really helped. I think I helped to really position and really get the customer on board with something. So again, you know, the opportunities come up all the time, but you can bring a unique perspective to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, this is all part of your storytelling, how you tell your story in the interview.
It's a great resource too. I've never heard of the RDSP, and maybe some of the grads that are part of our audience has never heard of that as well. So I've got a note here to add it to my resources, and I'll send it out to everybody. And again, it's called the Registered Disability Savings Plan.
Yes, unless the name change. Yes, that's what it's called. And just a quick thing is you put money into it, and then the government every month will match to a certain extent. And this is meant for retirement, so this is a long-term savings plan.
Yeah, good.
For you.
No.
Yeah. You can't touch it until you're like 50 years old or something like that. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting too much into banking.
No, but that's a great resource to know about. Absolutely. Tara, how successful is your program in getting clients jobs? How do you prepare clients to navigate the challenges of job searching?
So we've been very fortunate in the success that we've had. So I'll be very honest about our targets and our achievements. So we are funded by the provincial government, Employment Ontario, and our target for hiring is 300 people with disabilities per year. Last year, we had 420. So we've had a lot of success with surpassing our targets, by quite a bit. And the reason for that is there's a couple. So some of the things that we do to prepare people are the typical job search preparatory stuff. So resumes, making sure that somebody has a marketable resume, making sure that somebody is able to do well in the interview. So we do lots of mock interviews and practice interviews. We help people to identify what their strengths are, what their abilities are, what their interests are. Interest is a big indicator for successful employment opportunities. We support people with disclosure and arranging for accommodations. And, you know, we're there to help people with retention as well. So it's not just about getting the job, it's about the onboarding process, and it's about retaining that job. So those are some of the things that we do to support our clients. And you know, we have a really amazing team who, when they meet somebody and it's a disability that perhaps they're maybe not familiar with, they'll spend a lot of time, first of all, getting that person's firsthand experience of their disability, but then also doing some research to really understand what that disability might look like for all people. And then the other side of that is to really build that relationship with the employer and understand what the employer's needs are. So it's what we call a consultative sales approach, where we really understand what the employer is looking for and then find that match that meets the employer's needs. So it's really both, and we are really fortunate to have a team that understands a wide variety of disabilities and their impacts, and also what employers need.
Okay, great. No, thank you. So I've heard from many grads in regards to disclosure, and it's sort of when to do it, how to do it. How do you suggest grads disclose to employers their disability, and at what point of the hiring process? Who wants to start with that one?
So maybe I'll start with that. Give sort of an employer's perspective. And again, you know, I'm bringing the perspective of a company that has sort of done a lot of work in sort of developing models to really help candidates with disabilities. We understand disclosure is sort of a tricky process, and it's a personal journey for many. But throughout our recruitment process, we have set up a lot of touch points where a person can potentially disclose. First, when you sort of register, you know, your profile, you know, there's that standard question: are you a person with disability? You can choose to say yes there. Now, when let's say you apply for a role, many of our roles, the first stage of review is an online assessment, sort of like a behavioral type assessment. It's all online, it's all automated. When you get a request to complete it, we actually have some instructions there. If you are a person with disability, you can actually email. We have set up a private email account. It's called accessiblecareers@rbc.com. The candidate can request an accommodative version of the assessment. So some of these assessments have a timed section. We can request a non-timed version of the assessment. So that's disclosure and accommodation in one. Let's say you pass that and you're fine. At the interview stage, when the recruiter reaches out to you, I would like to invite you for an interview, is an opportunity for you to disclose as well if you need some support during the interview process. Again, I've been doing some work to sort of make it part of the standard communications that our recruiters say, where we proactively ask, you know, to tell, you know, we ask recruiters to ask candidates, you know, would you require any sort of support to be successful in interview? But even if you don't hear that, you can certainly volunteer that. Again, if you're not comfortable, you can come back to that private email account, accessiblecareers@rbc.com, and you can make the request there. I manage that email account, so I get all the requests there, and I work on your behalf. So I will go to the recruiter and start to make arrangements for you. And finally, at the point of onboarding, you've gone through the entire process. You didn't need accommodation or anything. You say you didn't want to disclose, but now you might need resources to be successful on the job. When you get that verbal offer or the physical offer, it is an opportunity again for you to disclose that you have a disability. And now the organization as a whole takes over. So we have a workplace accommodation department, and we have a whole process set up to provide accommodation support to make you successful for the job.
Can I jump in there, Ronald? And
go ahead, Lisa.
So I have a disability as well, and I chose to wait for a long time to disclose my disability for a number of reasons, because I have a stigmatized disability. So I agree with Ronald that it's absolutely important that it's a personal decision and there's no right or wrong. It's going to vary, and it's going to vary depending on the company you're applying to, the job, how you feel about your disability, how you can portray it, whether there's stigma, what is the right time. So there's a whole bunch of factors. So it really is an art form. Having said that, if you need that, now I'm going to put on my employment counselor hat. If you need to do your best in that interview, which obviously you want to be the person that Ronald remembers when he talked about, and you require something that will make you better or will explain a difference that just looks maybe uncomfortable for the interviewer, disclose. Because you don't want to have a less than optimal experience. So if you feel like you're having to hide something, or somebody doesn't understand why you're not making eye contact, I would explain it. I would disclose, because it's getting in the way of you getting the job. Same with once you start. Say you've gone through the interview process. The job offer can't be retracted. So once you've got that job offer, that's an ideal time. A lot of people wait. And I have a lot of discussions with the businesses that I work with, because sometimes a disability can look like you as an employee are a problem employee instead of an employee with a problem, which is maybe your disability. So an example that I'll give you is I had a candidate that we placed in a law firm, and severe anxiety, which she had disclosed to us but chose not to disclose to the employer. Well, she stopped showing up for meetings. That was part of the job. And when the employer asked her, is there some support you need? Are you having a problem? Do you need accommodation? They said, no, no, no. And it ended up that person got let go because it looked like they just were, no respect for other people's times, no respect for the client, don't fit in here. So it was really an anxiety issue that the company was more than willing to make an accommodation for, but if you don't disclose, you can't get help. And my experience with most businesses is if they hire you, they want you to work out. They don't want to hire you and fire you. The whole point is they like you. They want you to stay. So why would they not give you? And really, disclosure is about asking for what you need to succeed in the workplace. It's not about telling personal details about your disability. It's about disclosing, here's what I need to be done a little bit differently at work in order to succeed. So I call accommodations productivity enhancers.
Oh, I like that.
It's going to make you better. What employer wouldn't want you to be better at your job? A final note on this is when you use our platform, the Discoverability job board, you have the option to disclose ahead of time that we protect that information, keep it confidential, but you don't have to worry about disclosing because it's done in the system, and you're only matched to employers who are looking for people with disabilities, so you don't have to worry about this. They're okay. The employers on our system, RBC, they're okay with you having a disability. They actually see value in that. So I think we're the only job board in Canada that does that. It's a great reason to go on there because it just eliminates the whole issue of disclosure. The final thing, and Tara, I think will say this, I'm going to tell her, is practice. Because usually for most of us, the first time we disclose, we blurt out way too much because we've never been encouraged to talk about it, The employer does not want to hear personal details that are better kept between you and your healthcare providers. They just need to know what you do differently in the workplace so that they can address that mismatch.
Great information. Thanks, Lisa. Tara, did you have anything to add to that?
I agree with everything. I learned probably the most of what I know about disclosure and accommodations from Lisa through various different presentations that she's done. So, I absolutely agree. I think some of the most important things are figuring out the when to disclose, the how to disclose, and why are you disclosing? Is it because you need an accommodation that will help you to work better in that position? So it's not, that being said, when you're on a platform like Discoverability, it's incredibly important at that point to disclose because your market of employers are looking for people to disclose that they have a disability. They want to hire people with disabilities. So disclosure in that scenario is incredibly important. And I think practice, I 100% agree with. Learning what to say and how to say it and practicing that is key. And really understanding what your need is and being able to articulate that to the employer.
Okay, great. And I really like the idea of reframing, reframing it so you're looking at it from a place of enhanced productivity. And I think just that shift will allow for a different way to present it to employer. That's great. Okay, so where does a grad get started who's interested in participating in either one of these different programs? So maybe Tara, can you start with how would someone get involved then with PATH?
Okay, so things look a little bit different right now with PATH because of COVID-19. So we're offering all of our services virtually. What that means is that you can make an appointment via phone, via email, via our chat through our website, and you will have a virtual experience of meeting with your personal employment coordinator who will assist you with all of the things that you need. So gather all of the information about you and what you're looking for, and then develop an employment action plan to help you to move forward toward your goals. So it's basically reaching out, and we're doing our meetings via the Zoom platform with clients, via telephone, via email, basically whatever will work for each particular participant. So it's really easy. We've got a website, www.pathemployment.com. That's a good place to start.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Ronald, how about let's almost get involved with your program at RBC. What do they need to do?
Sure. So for students who are looking for internships or co-op positions, every semester, RBC has tons of opportunities. So I would say start with your career site, job boards. We post roles there every semester. Right now we are recruiting, I think that we're at the tail end of recruiting for fall. So there'll be jobs there. You can also go on to our normal job websites, jobs.rbc.com, and start there looking for roles. It has a lot of filters. Look for things that fit your criteria, your skills and experiences. And the experiences part is very important. And this is for students and graduates. Manage your expectations. I see a lot of situations where after a while, people just start to apply to everything. If you're a new grad, chances are you will not qualify for a manager role. Right? You want to look for entry level type roles. Outside of that, sign up for Discoverability. We post roles there all the time. We also work with Career Edge. So Career Edge will offer contract positions. Sometimes it is only for persons with disabilities. We offer Career Edge contract roles there. It's a great entry point into the bank with the potential to be converted to full time. And lastly, follow me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of roles regularly, as well as events that I'm holding. So targeted events. Lisa will usually amplify it for me. I'll have other recruiters amplifying. So I have a lot of events. I might have something coming up soon, so follow me. It's not, details haven't worked out yet, so I can't really say, but fingers crossed it's going to be big. So only going for people with disabilities. So yeah, follow me for sure, and that I think is some of the best entry points.
Can I just, you mentioned career, and I am going to put that up with one of our resources. Is it Careerability or Career Edge? Or is it all one?
If I'm not mistaken, it used to be called Careerability, but it is Career Edge. They're the same company, but it's just this straight Career Edge now.
Okay, great, good to know. Thank you. Thanks, Ronald.
Sure.
Lisa?
And I'll add, please sign up on Discoverability. We have more jobs than we have candidates that match with the jobs. So I need you to sign up so that you can fill Ronald's job that he just posted yesterday. So, we've got a ton of employers looking. Bell posted 350 jobs. We got 3,000 posted by the Government of Ontario. We've got, RBC posting constantly. So please sign up, create a robust profile. So fill everything out or you're going to get bad matches. I put the link to Boyan, who works at our organization and can help you sign up. I do think working with an employment service provider is a great opportunity. PATH in Hamilton is amazing. There are organizations in different locations that do a really good job. Career Edge is amazing. There's also, for instance, if you're neurodiverse, Specialist Sterna, which is a great organization. If you have a developmental disability, ready, willing, and able. So there's a lot of organizations out there that support job seekers. Get involved. Don't, my big thing is I own my disability now. I'm proud of it. I'm an amazing employee. You guys are too. Just embrace it and, learn to speak about it as an asset, not a deficit. So it's an asset-based approach. And, learn to tell your story in a way that's going to make an employer really want to hire you.
Excellent points. Our time is almost up around this part of it. We have some questions, but just before we go to the questions, I wanted, this is a really difficult time for everybody with COVID-19. And I wondered if you had some message to those that are part of our group today to help encourage them to stick with it. They may be struggling even more with additional challenges at this time.
I would say use this time wisely. This is a time you actually have to create really robust profiles, tools. I love LinkedIn as well. Connect to people, network. Like I said, follow Ronald, reach out, ask for information, interviews. This is a time where you actually have a chance to ask somebody to look at your resume, give you feedback. Find the right employment service provider for yourself. Send out customized resumes. Be looking at the job market. There's a ton of free webinars that I go on 2 or 3 a day. So, you take a few free courses to upgrade. This is a great opportunity to be ready so that you're the first candidates in line when the job market does open up.
Yeah, and I would say that there are still many employers that are hiring. It has slowed in some industries for sure due to COVID, but it's still a great time to do that prep work and to still apply for those jobs, to register with Discoverability, to register with services like PATH, to apply to RBC. There's many employers that are hiring, even despite our current situation.
I definitely agree with everything that everyone said. It's been a really...
Ronald, there's a bit of an echo, so me means another device is on that's close to you?
No, I try to take off everything.
Okay, now there's no echo, so it's okay now.
That's weird. Okay. Is it good still? Perfect.
I think it's good.
Yeah, no, for sure. So it's really has been a difficult time, and I get that. I hear a lot of candidates have been reaching out to me. But bear in mind, you're not alone. We all trying to get through this together. One of the things that have been very promising for me is that RBC we're adapting very quickly to the new reality, and we are trying to get back to some sort of normalcy in a virtual way. I'm seeing a lot of attention coming on the whole notion of diversity and inclusion. Managers are coming to us. They're still hitting our door, asking for support. And I think a lot is going to be coming up soon. So as Lisa and Tara said, get yourself ready. The cliff hasn't fallen. We haven't fallen off the cliff. It's going to pick back up soon.
Good. Okay, thank you. Very encouraging message. Okay, I have some questions coming in. And I'm going to start with, we may go over a little, just by 5 minutes or so in our time. I think I allotted a few minutes for questions. Okay, here's the question from Lucas. As one diagnosed on the spectrum, how would I best go about networking with other people in the industry of my liking, which is video game development, if my normal social skills are not the best? So basically a networking question, how to do it.
So I think this is a really great time to do some virtual networking, writing emails, connecting with people in the industry through LinkedIn. This is a really great time to be able to reach out sort of in a virtual way without necessarily having to meet somebody in person. And what a great time for somebody like that to use LinkedIn as a platform.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's how you position yourself, right? So reach out virtually or through email. have, you know, say that my preference is to communicate via email, not in person. And just say I'm neurodiverse. That's all you have to say. So I prefer, and I find I'm most eloquent in the written word. And I don't think most, you know, I think most people would be open to that.
I think so too. I have a question from Francis. What if an employer does not give an accommodation, even though the employer knows you have a disability? What's your recourse?
My first would always be talk to a lawyer. You do have the right to an accommodation. So as long as it's a reasonable, so it is a discussion, it's not a demand on either side. All right, so this is a discussion and a process, the request for an accommodation. So depending on the company and the situation, you need to be flexible and go in with a positive attitude, and I would always support the employer. There are services that can help you with this, like that's why you would perhaps work with an employment service agency. If you can't get, and it's a reasonable accommodation, you can consult a lawyer, you can file a complaint. My option would always be to try to explain how it's going to improve your productivity and how can you meet the employer's needs and yours. So, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out, and in which case you do have legal recourse. But you know, you need to speak to a lawyer about that. Ronald, do you want to add anything? I mean, I think you guys are amazing at giving accommodations, so I don't imagine this is an issue. But
yeah, it's not something I come across. The minute you say you require a accommodation, there is a whole army moving in the background to sort of try to facilitate. And as Lisa mentioned, it is sort of a conversation back and forth, because the accommodations it has to be reasonable, and it's something that we can hopefully adapt. I've seen where, you know, we had one of my colleagues who is blind. He got a new role. He's in finance, and he has adaptive software that, you know, could help him with the screen. But there were some pieces of software that could not work, and we actually sort of carved out that specific part of his mandate, gave it to somebody else because we couldn't find the right adaptive technology, right? So we try to work with the employee, the candidates, to find solutions. So I haven't come across situations where we chose not to. At least try anyway. So yeah, I can't. I don't have much to add on that.
I think so. I think you're all set up for that, so that makes sense.
I think it's important to remember that most accommodations actually cost nothing. So, you know, most of the time, I think it's really rare that we find an employer who would need to put out a lot of money. Most are under $500 if there's a cost at all. And the great thing about employment service providers is they're able to pay for some of those accommodations for you. So when you're registered with them, for example, we have a client who was really struggling with Zoom interviews, trying to do them on their phone with their vision loss. And so one of the things that we were able to provide for them was a laptop. Now, obviously, we can't do that for every client, but that was something that allowed them to do a Zoom interview effectively, and they had like 6 lined up. So it was a really great tool for them to use instead of trying to do it on a little iPhone.
Okay.
And one other, sorry, I know we're short on time, but I actually think this is really important. So I actually did ask for an accommodation once that I didn't get, which was work from home because of my disability. And, you know, it was just a flat out no. And then about a month later, I got overwhelmed and I just had to go home, which wasn't ideal. But my manager called and said, what happened? And I said, this is related to my disability. And I just found it too noisy. And actually, subsequent to that, they freed up an office that was unused, a meeting room, for when the office got too noisy. And I am allowed to work from home now. They just didn't understand the connection to the disability when I asked. So that's why I do think it's a discussion. And if you can show, hey, I can productively work from home, or I'm open to other options, which was having a private office to go into where it's quiet, it'll be much more successful. I think that a lot of the discussions around accommodations tend to be yes, no. And that's not really how any conversations happen. So just some thoughts.
Well, that's good additional information. I think we're out of time. Unfortunately, it's 12:47, and I'm going to have to wrap up. I got to as many questions as I can, and for those out there where we weren't able to address your questions, I still have them. I will do my best to answer some of them. If I can't, I can maybe reach out again to Tara, Lisa, and Ronald and just check in with you, because we got a lot of questions before the webinar too, and I am aware of those, and I'll try my best to address them. So this is it. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you so much, Tara, Lisa, Ronald, for coming in, sharing your insights, your information, your resources, everything. It was awesome. And I think it was really valuable information. So thanks so much. There is a final slide that just came up with additional resources. And again, I will also be adding some that were mentioned in the webinar, and we'll be sending out that next week. There are some, the links too will be included in the chat box, so have a look at that. And please feel free to connect with me. I believe there's a slide with my contact information too. There it is. If you need to come through and you want to sit with me one-on-one, well, virtual, or over the phone, we can also address some of your concerns, and maybe I can also help you prepare for employment. Yes, we are recording this session, the webinar, and we will send it out to you. And I think I've covered everything. So I want to wish everyone good health. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.